I'm 37 years old and married to Kate, who's 35. We've been happily married for 2 years, and I can honestly say these have been 2 of the best years of my life. Kate is a passionate professor at City College, dedicated to shaping young minds, while I work in the ever-evolving field of marketing. Our journey together began at a mutual friend's party, where we instantly connected. At that time, Kate was dating someone, and I was entangled in a complicated on-again, off-again relationship. Despite our connection, we didn't take things further until one pivotal moment, her birthday. I reached out to her on Facebook just after midnight, wishing her a happy birthday. That simple message led to a night-long conversation filled with laughter and shared stories. The following day, since she had no plans for her special day, I invited her out for dinner and a long drive. It was during that dinner, under the stars, that I realized I was falling for her. From that point on, everything changed. We spent the next 2 years building a beautiful life together, one filled with love, laughter, and mutual support. Our wedding was magical, and just last month, we celebrated our 2nd anniversary, reminiscing about the unforgettable moments we've shared. Life seemed perfect, until everything took a turn. A few weeks ago, while having drinks with a close friend, he casually dropped a bombshell that shattered my calm. He told me he had seen Kate with a much younger man, probably in his 20s. At first, I brushed it off as a misunderstanding. After all, he could just be a friend. But then my friend hesitated, his tone shifting. He described how Kate and this guy were sitting closely together, his hand resting on her waist, and how he leaned in as if to kiss her cheek. My heart raced as I listened, and when he mentioned they were cuddling, I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I pressed my friend for more details. He didn't snap any pictures, saying it all happened so suddenly that he didn't have the presence of mind to document it. Plus, we were in a public place, and he felt it would have been inappropriate to invade their privacy. Though I trusted my friend, the lack of concrete evidence made it difficult for me to confront Kate. I didn't want to accuse her of infidelity based solely on someone else's observations. When I returned home, I found Kate curled up on the couch, lost in a book. She looked so content, so at peace, and the image tugged at my heartstrings. Part of me wanted to ask her if she had met anyone that day, but I struggled to find the right words without sounding paranoid. If only we had that kind of relationship where we shared every little detail of our days, but we didn't. We discussed the important things, but there was always a layer of privacy we respected. To ease myself into the conversation, I started with some casual small talk. I made up a story about bumping into an old school friend during a client meeting. I casually mentioned we had lunch together, and Kate responded with an indifferent, "Oh, that's nice. Must have been great catching up." I sensed that her response lacked enthusiasm, almost as if she was more interested in her book than my day. When I asked about her own day, she replied, "Just the usual, nothing special," before diving back into her novel. That should have been the end of it, but something nagged at me. If that guy had really been a friend or colleague, wouldn't she have mentioned it? The doubt gnawed at me for days, fueling my anxiety. I began to scrutinize Kate's every move. For the next week, I kept a close watch on her, looking for any signs of deception. Yet, she seemed perfectly normal, going about her routines with her usual grace. However, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My mind raced with possibilities, and the urge to uncover the truth grew stronger. One night, the need to know became overwhelming, and I made a choice I never thought I would. I decided to check her phone. As she slept beside me, her breathing steady and calm, I quietly reached for her phone, my heart pounding. I logged in, my fingers trembling with each tap. Her inbox and social media were clean, filled only with the usual conversations with colleagues and students. I felt a fleeting sense of relief, but it was short-lived. Next, I scrolled through her call log, and there it was, a call right around the time my friend had seen her with that guy. The sight of that entry sent chills down my spine. My stomach knotted as I absorbed the reality of what I was looking at. The pieces were starting to fit, but I still didn't have enough information to confront her. Panic gripped me. I felt as if I were standing at the edge of a precipice, with no clear way to navigate the storm brewing in my heart. I thought about the love we had built together and the dreams we shared. Did I really want to throw it all away based on a phone call and some vague observations? In the days that followed, I became consumed by my thoughts. I tried to approach Kate with an open mind, but every time I looked at her, the images of what my friend had described flooded back. I wanted to believe she was innocent, that there was a reasonable explanation for everything. But every moment of doubt felt like a crack forming in the foundation of our marriage. I needed to confront her, to find out the truth, but I also feared the potential consequences of that conversation. Would it lead to the end of everything we had built together? Or would it be the moment we could salvage our relationship? I was torn between the love I felt for her and the gnawing suspicion that threatened to unravel my world. The longer I waited, the heavier the burden became. I could feel the weight of my unanswered questions pressing down on me, and I knew that the time had come for a conversation. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. With a deep breath, I steeled myself for the inevitable confrontation, determined to uncover the reality of our relationship, even if it meant facing the possibility of heartbreak. The contact saved in Kate's phone under the name Rumi16 instantly piqued my curiosity. It signified a former student from the 2016 batch, a detail she had kept for easy reference. At first, I felt a wave of confusion wash over me. It was one thing for her to be close with friends, but a student? That felt unsettling and frankly, gross. As I scanned through the chats on her phone, looking at her conversations with colleagues and friends, something struck me as off. Where were the messages from her students? The idea that my wife might be involved with one of them was hard to digest. But the evidence was right there, glaring at me. I opened her WhatsApp and searched for the chat with Rumi. The chat history revealed a different story than I had anticipated. Kate had been sexting him for months. At first glance, the chat contained typical messages from 2016, farewells, good wishes, and the usual pleasantries. But then, about 2 months ago, I noticed a message where he mentioned he was back in town. He had moved to Texas after graduating, which added another layer to the situation. I couldn't bear the thought of reading through every single message, so I exported the entire chat to my email and deleted the history on her phone. I needed to digest this information on my own time, free from the immediate shock of her deceit. That night, I delved deep into the messages, poring over every word, trying to piece together the timeline of their relationship. As I read, it became painfully clear that their physical relationship had begun while he was still in college. It started innocently enough during his final year when Kate began teaching his class. Rumi had sensed that Kate was interested in him and began to flirt softly. At first, Kate resisted his advances, but soon she confessed to him her intense desire to feel his body. That was the moment their affair ignited. But the affair didn't end there. As graduation approached, he fell in love with another girl, the daughter of a wealthy businessman in Texas. He decided to move there with her, leaving Kate heartbroken. To cheer her up during his last few months in college, Rumi was back in her life for one last fling. While skimming through their messages, I reached the farewell exchanges but didn't dare scroll up further, knowing that the details might hurt too much. Thankfully, I had exported the entire conversation, which provided the clarity I needed. I was sure Kate would never have revealed the full extent of the relationship to me. Ironically, while she was getting close to Rumi, Kate had been dating someone else during that time. It seemed that betrayal was a recurring theme in her life. Since Rumi moved away, they had only kept in touch through casual birthday and holiday wishes. But then, 3 months ago, he texted her to announce that he had moved back to the city with his wife, the very girlfriend he had pursued in Texas. The initiation of their conversation sent chills down my spine. Rumi had told Kate that he missed her body and wanted to taste her again. Initially, she seemed to resist his advances, but it didn't take long for her to give in. Their encounters had resumed, and it looked like they had slept together about 4 or 5 times. By the time I finished reading their messages, dawn was breaking. I had work the next day and desperately needed to get some sleep. But the images of betrayal and heartbreak played in my mind, leaving me restless. When I finally drifted off, it was only for a short while. When I woke up, Kate was already gone, off to college as if nothing had happened. I managed to make breakfast and headed to the office, but the weight of the revelation loomed over me, a cloud of distrust and sorrow casting shadows over my day. As I sat at my desk, trying to focus on work, my thoughts drifted back to those messages, the undeniable proof of her infidelity and betrayal. How could she do this to me? How could she flaunt our marriage and our life together for a fleeting romance? The day dragged on, each moment stretching into eternity as I grappled with my emotions. I knew I needed to confront her, to unravel this tangled web of lies, but the thought of facing her and the inevitable confrontation filled me with dread. What would I say? How could I even begin to express the hurt and betrayal I felt? Eventually, I made it through the day, but the turmoil within me continued to churn. It was clear that the trust I once had in Kate was shattered. No longer could I see her as the loving wife I thought I knew. Instead, she had become a stranger, a woman who had made choices that would forever change the fabric of our relationship. As I drove home, my mind raced with possibilities, weighing my options. Confrontation? Separation? Would it come to that? The thought left me feeling cold and alone, a haunting realization that life as I knew it was about to change irrevocably. Arriving home, the silence felt suffocating. Every corner of the house, once filled with warmth and laughter, now felt like a stark reminder of the betrayal I had uncovered. I knew I had to face her, but the uncertainty of how to move forward was a heavy burden to bear. The evening stretched out before me, and I sat in the living room, replaying every moment of our life together, trying to find clues, signs that I had missed. The laughter, the shared dreams, the plans we made, it all felt like a cruel joke now. And as I waited for her to come home, I was left alone with my thoughts, bracing myself for the confrontation that loomed on the horizon. Kate wasn't home. Usually, she'd stroll in from college around 5 p.m., but tonight the clock had already ticked past 7 o'clock, and there was still no sign of her. I'd grown accustomed to her hanging out with friends and classmates after school, and it never bothered me, until now. This time felt different. I was on edge, anxious for her to return so we could finally confront the elephant in the room. I had all the evidence I needed, and I was done with the games. The tension was suffocating, and I longed for resolution. As the minutes dragged on, my restlessness escalated. I picked up my phone and called her, my heart racing. "Hey, can you come home?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Is everything okay?" she replied, sounding surprised. I could sense her concern from the other end of the line. I had never called her like this before. Within half an hour, she was home. I was sitting on the front porch, and when she walked in, I could tell she sensed the gravity of the situation. I wasn't glued to my phone or iPad, I was just sitting there, tense and waiting. She rushed toward me, her eyes wide with worry. "What's wrong?" she asked, breathless. "I'm sorry for interrupting your time with your roomie, was it?" I said, my tone casual but loaded with meaning. She shot me a cold glare. "What do you mean by that?" I leaned in, my voice low but firm. "There's no need to play hide and seek anymore." At that, she accused me of making baseless accusations. I pulled out the chat exports I had meticulously saved. The color drained from her face, and she froze, caught off guard. After a moment, she recovered enough to accuse me of invading her privacy. "Seriously? You think me checking your phone is a privacy breach, but you sneaking into other guys' beds is no big deal?" I shot back, incredulous. Her expression shifted, but she was quick to defend herself. "That's not your business," she snapped. Yet, despite her protests, I kept pushing. Was your last breakup also because of this roomie? She glared at me, but then, almost reluctantly, she admitted that her last boyfriend had ended things when he found out she was sleeping with one of her students. I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter sound filled with disbelief. How could you throw everything away for someone like that? A guy who's clearly got his life together while you're acting like this. Addictive personalities are hard to resist, she fired back, her voice sharp. Addictive? What is he, a drug dealer? I replied, exasperated. You need to leave. We're living in my house. She looked unremorseful, shrugging off my words. You're being overly dramatic. It was just physical, there were no emotions involved, she countered, trying to downplay her actions. Reconsider? You think this is an impulsive decision? I shook my head. No. It's final. I'm asking you to leave. She stomped her foot, anger boiling over. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back in 2 days, begging me to return. I couldn't help but laugh again. Really? You think I'd ever beg for your reconciliation? That's the last thing I'd ever do. While she packed her things, I remained seated on the porch, a calmness washing over me despite the storm brewing inside. She didn't even glance at me as she left, striding out the door with a huff. I'll be sending the divorce papers soon, I called after her. If you have any self-respect left, you'll sign them without contesting. She didn't reply. Instead, she left with a look in her eyes that said she wasn't going to make this easy. It felt as if she was treating me like the villain in her story, when in reality, I was the one betrayed. I couldn't shake the feeling that she was going to fight back, and her tantrums only fueled my desire to crush her ego. Once she was gone, I felt a rush of anger and determination. I needed to dig deeper. I quickly searched for this roomie on social media before he had a chance to block me. If she thought she could walk away unscathed, she had another thing coming. I was done being the passive player in this game. The truth would come to light, and I was ready to expose it all. I began my investigation by scouring Rue's wife's social media profile, sending her a friend request even though her account was set to private. While I waited, I took the step of hiring a lawyer to help me navigate the mess that was my marriage. After 2 days, with no acceptance of my request, I decided not to waste any more time. I gathered a few screenshots of the explicit chats between Rue and Kate and sent them directly to her. Within an hour, she replied, clearly intrigued and asking for more details. I identified myself as Kate's husband, the man Rue had been sleeping with. In my messages, I included sections of their conversations where Rue casually mentioned her father's wealth and business dealings. She quickly asked if I could send her the entire chat. At that point, I was eager to meet her face to face and lay everything out, but I hesitated. I didn't want to come off as creepy or overly aggressive. Instead, I asked for her email address and sent her the full conversation. She wanted to know how I discovered the truth, so I explained everything in detail. I urged her to read the messages carefully. I believed that clarity would come to her after she did. A couple of hours later, she reached out again, asking if I had confronted Kate. I replied that I had, and then she dropped a bombshell. She planned to involve her father to deal with Rue and then went offline. I wanted to check in with her, but after that conversation, she seemed to vanish. Now it had been 3 days, and worry settled over me like a heavy blanket. I couldn't shake the fear that Rue might have harmed her once she learned the truth. It was clear to me that he was using her for her father's money, and I was terrified about her safety. I tried reaching out through every social media platform and email I could think of, but I was met with silence. All I could do was hope that she was okay. Meanwhile, my lawyer was hard at work preparing divorce papers for me, and I promised myself I would provide updates as soon as anything changed. Now for the first update. Thank you all for your encouragement. I genuinely believed I was making a hasty decision, but your support made me feel validated. The pats on the back and words of encouragement were a boost to my confidence as I forged ahead. Now, onto some updates. remember how Ru's wife had been silent for an entire week? Well, I finally heard back from her, but relief didn't wash over me. Instead, suspicion crept in. What if Ru was the one texting me from her phone? To ease my mind, I requested a phone call. As I waited anxiously, I saw that she had read my messages expressing concern for her safety. Then, to my surprise, she called me immediately, and I felt a wave of relief. She explained that as soon as she read the messages I sent, she booked the first flight to Texas. She had isolated herself in a new city, too fearful to confront Ru alone, especially after the shady nature of his messages. Instead, she brought her parents into the mix. In fact, she'd been off her phone for a week at her lawyer's suggestion because Ru had been trying to contact her through every possible means. Her parents worried that if he spoke to her, he might spin some manipulative tale to win her back. She assured me, however, that she wasn't naive enough to fall for his charm. I was curious to know what her parents had done regarding Ru. She laughed lightly, a sound that indicated some relief amidst the chaos. "You won't believe it," she said. Instead of confronting him about the cheating, they told him they discovered some accounting irregularities in the office that he managed. Until they sorted that out, he was advised to stay away from me. I couldn't help but chuckle at the cleverness of it all. Ru had no idea that his in-laws were onto him. Her father-in-law thought that a cheating case in court would only cause a stir, but it wouldn't do much damage since the courts don't punish for infidelity in a marriage. At most, Ru would face a slap on the wrist. As our conversation continued, I felt a mix of admiration and sympathy for her. Here she was, caught in a whirlwind of betrayal and deception, yet she was handling it with strength and grace. I shared my worries about Kate, fearing that she was still under Ru's influence. She listened attentively, her brow furrowing with concern. "We need to figure this out together," she said. "You're not alone in this anymore." Her words felt like a lifeline, and for the first time in a long while, I sensed that there might be a way forward, not just for me but for her as well. The road ahead would be rocky, but maybe, just maybe, there was a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness that had engulfed both our lives. He would have been ordered to pay alimony for the emotional distress caused to his wife, but it turned out that his father-in-law wasn't interested in money, he wanted to destroy him instead. Just a few days later, I got a message from Roy. His exact words were, "Dude, your wife is totally delusional. She's spinning these wild stories and insists that I'm going to marry her. Does she even realize I'm 10 years younger than her?" He went on to admit that while they had slept together, he couldn't marry every woman he hooked up with. Roy had confided in Kate about his struggles with his in-laws, and in a twisted turn of events, she claimed I was the one who had leaked their conversations to his wife. But Roy made it clear that nobody was concerned about their affair, they were worried about the accounting problems at the company. He genuinely believed that Kate was just using this as an opportunity to manipulate him into marrying her. I couldn't help but laugh at his messages, he was just as delusional as Kate. He thought his in-laws were angry over financial matters, completely oblivious to the fact that he had been cheating. A month had passed since D-Day, and the divorce papers were finally ready. I called Kate's mother, asking if Kate was staying with her. The shock in her voice was palpable. "What do you mean Kate's not with me? Is everything alright?" I told her the truth about the situation, but she didn't believe me and insisted I show her evidence. At that point, I was utterly exhausted from trying to prove my side to everyone, so I simply told her that I was sending the divorce papers to her house and that she needed to get them signed by Kate. An hour later, my phone was inundated with abusive voicemails from Kate, filled with accusations of ruining her life and Roy's. I didn't block her number, I wanted to see how low she could go. My relationship with her might have been shorter than some of the stories I'd read about others, but I had been with Kate for 4 long years, and separating from her was painful, despite the emotional abuse she inflicted on me. After enduring her tirades, I finally blocked her. It's been a week since then, and she still hasn't signed the divorce papers. I reached out to Roy's wife to check on the status of their divorce proceedings, but it seemed she was off on a holiday in Vus, trying to escape her depression while her father dealt with Roy. It's interesting how rich people have their own ways of coping with crises. I'll keep you all updated once everything settles down. For now, I just want to distance myself from thoughts of Kate and focus on moving forward with my life. Now for the final update, my divorce has finally been finalized. Yes, thank you. In my last update, many commented on the possibility of me dating Roy's ex-wife due to the way I expressed my concern. But let me be clear, I have zero interest in getting tangled up in that mess. Besides, she's not my type at all. I can't even fathom or afford a lavish getaway after everything I've endured, and I have no intention of leeching off her father's money, especially considering how they've dealt with Roy. Roy's father-in-law accused him of embezzling funds from the company, and he somehow proved this in court. I'm not sure if Roy actually siphoned money or if he was just framed. His wife didn't know the details of how her father managed to pull that off, and it only added to the drama. I told you she was a rich princess who has no idea what the price of vegetables is. So, here I am, ready to embrace a new chapter in my life, free from the chaos and toxicity that had consumed me. I'm looking ahead with hope, determined to rebuild and rediscover who I am outside of this whirlwind. I'm 37. And my wife, Kate, is 35. We've been happily married for 2 years, and I can honestly say these have been the most fulfilling years of my life. Kate is a passionate professor at City College, shaping the minds of future generations, while I navigate the dynamic world of marketing. Our journey together began at a mutual friend's party, where we hit it off instantly. At that time, Kate was dating someone, and I was caught up in a confusing on-again, off-again relationship. We connected deeply but didn't pursue anything until a pivotal moment on her birthday. I reached out on Facebook just after midnight, wishing her a happy birthday. That simple message ignited a conversation that stretched through the night, filled with laughter, shared stories, and a palpable chemistry. The next day, since she had no plans, I invited her out for dinner and a long drive. Under a starry sky, I felt something change within me. I realized I was falling for her. From that day on, everything shifted. Over the next 2 years, we crafted a beautiful life together, full of love, laughter, and unwavering support. Our wedding was a dream come true, and just last month, we celebrated our 2nd anniversary, reminiscing about all the unforgettable moments we've shared. Life seemed idyllic, until it all came crashing down. A few weeks ago, while having drinks with a close friend, he casually dropped a bombshell that shattered my calm. He told me he had seen Kate with a much younger man, likely in his 20s. At first, I dismissed it as a misunderstanding, surely he was just a friend. But as he continued, his tone changed. He described how they were sitting very close, with his hand resting on her waist, and how he leaned in as if to kiss her cheek. My heart raced as I processed this, and when he mentioned they were cuddling, a knot tightened in my stomach. I pressed him for more details, but he didn't have any pictures. It all happened so fast that he didn't think to document it, and he felt uncomfortable invading their privacy in a public space. Though I trusted my friend, the absence of hard evidence made it difficult to confront Kate. I didn't want to accuse her of infidelity based solely on someone else's observations. When I got home, I found Kate cozied up on the couch, engrossed in a book. She looked so content, so at peace, and the sight tugged at my heartstrings. I wanted to ask her if she had met anyone that day, but I struggled to find the right words without sounding suspicious. If only we had a relationship where we shared every detail of our day. But we respected each other's privacy, discussing only the important things. To ease into the conversation, I started with some casual small talk. I fabricated a story about running into an old school friend at a client meeting. I casually mentioned we had lunch together, and Kate responded with an indifferent, "Oh, that's nice. Must have been great catching up." Her lack of enthusiasm caught me off guard. It felt like she was more absorbed in her book than my day. When I asked about her own day, she replied, "Just the usual, nothing special," and returned to her novel. That should have been the end of it, but a nagging thought lingered: if that guy had really been a friend or colleague, wouldn't she have mentioned it? Doubt gnawed at me for days, feeding my anxiety. I started to scrutinize Kate's every move. For the next week, I kept a close watch on her, searching for any signs of deception. Yet, she seemed perfectly normal, going about her routines with her usual grace. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. My mind raced with possibilities, and the urge to uncover the truth grew stronger. One night, the need to know became overwhelming, and I made a choice I never thought I would. I decided to check her phone. As she slept beside me, her breathing steady and calm, I quietly reached for her phone, my heart pounding in my chest. I logged in, my fingers trembling with each tap. Her inbox and social media were clean, filled only with mundane conversations with colleagues and students. I felt a fleeting sense of relief, but it was short-lived. Then I scrolled through her call log, and there it was, a call right around the time my friend had seen her with that guy. The sight of that entry sent chills racing down my spine. My stomach twisted as I absorbed what I was seeing. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but I still didn't have enough to confront her. Panic gripped me. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff, staring into the abyss, unsure of how to navigate the storm brewing in my heart. I thought about the love we had built together and the dreams we shared. Did I really want to jeopardize everything based on a phone call and some vague observations? In the days that followed, I became consumed by my thoughts. I tried to approach Kate with an open mind, but every time I looked at her, the images my friend had described flooded back. I wanted to believe she was innocent, that there was a reasonable explanation for everything. But every moment of doubt felt like a crack forming in the foundation of our marriage. I needed to confront her, to find out the truth, but I also dreaded the potential fallout from that conversation. Would it shatter everything we had built together? Or could it be the moment that salvaged our relationship? I was torn between the love I felt for her and the gnawing suspicion that threatened to unravel my world. The longer I waited, the heavier the burden became. I could feel the weight of my unanswered questions pressing down on me, and I knew the time had come for a conversation. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself for the inevitable confrontation, determined to uncover the reality of our relationship, even if it meant facing the possibility of heartbreak.